Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I just wanted to kind of go over all the details we have of the upcoming season, and especially since the full patch notes actually released today. I've been waiting for this before I made any kind of video or anything because, as most of you should know, a big part of this update is going to be a balance patch that's going over American, British, and Russian tech trees. So I think they said close to like 170 vehicles in those being looked at. So I've already glanced at some of the changes, but I'll go a bit more in depth when we get to that point. But first, just wanted to take a look at the season pass info. I'm sure like a lot of other YouTubers have already made their reactions to this. You've already seen reactions to this in Discord and Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your info at. But just wanted to go ahead and take a look in case you guys hadn't already seen it. They have their nifty little graphic here of all the stuff. Pretty standard. We've seen this graphic a lot. Nothing's really changed a whole lot. Um, Goes ahead, covers all the season pass reward tanks. So you'll be able to get the Loza M4 Sherman, the like a tier 6, I think, Soviet Sherman. The Panzerjäger, I believe that's the tier 8 version. The KV4 KTTS, another TD, and then there's this Osorio. I think this is the Brazilian MBT that they're introducing, and this will be the level 100 reward. If you buy the Ultimate Season Pass, you get the Tier 10 Kanonen Jagdpanzer 3 GST term, and it's got its own unique skin as well. So yeah, here's some emblems and stuff that you can get. Nothing too crazy. I think some of the older season passes have had pretty decent emblems, especially for like the season it's tied to. And I don't know, just not this one doesn't really speak to me that much. But yeah, go ahead. Same bonuses you're probably used to every season. Silver, XP. So you got the KTTS. I don't know where in the season you get this. One of the lower levels, I assume. Maybe actually at level 100 would. Yeah. Okay, so this one's at level 100. So this is the level 100 one. The Panzerjäger will probably be somewhere in the 70s then, and then the Loza is probably a bit lower as well. Um, Here's the Osorio, and this one is in Era 3. So, I don't really have that much experience with Era 3, but I will say 5.9-second reload, like 5,600 DPM. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit high for Era 3. I don't know. Maybe that's like standard. I'm really not up to date, but nothing on here looks too bad. Armor wise, it looks not great, but again, it's Cold War. Don't know really how much spacing there is, so just have to kind of wait and see in game what it's like. But yeah, kind of looks to be like it is a medium, so I'm not expecting too much, like armor wise. It's probably very focused around that DPM and accuracy at 0.17. That is a bit crazy as well. So yeah, coming on down a little bit further, we have the Kanonen Jagdpanzer term. This thing looks a bit wild. So, right off the bat, very good mobility, 22.5 horsepower to weight ratio, and 68 km/h top speed limit. This is a TD, by the way. Reverses at 20, that's very healthy. Not the greatest hole in turret traverse, so you probably want to run something like clutch braking on it, if I had to guess. 10 degrees of gun depression is amazing. It does not have a fully traversable turret, though. It's only 40 degrees left and right, so do keep that in mind. Something similar to like a Minotauro in that regard. 265 on the standard rounds, 310 on its premium heat rounds. 310 heat is definitely, I feel like that's one of the lowest in terms of tier 10 TDs. Probably right there along with the Minnow, actually. Yeah, so Definitely not good premium pin. Not really accustomed to that on TDs, so I had to see. 0.36 accuracy, 2.5 second aim time. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not great either. 9.8 second reload for 400 alpha. Again, not the worst, but not the greatest either. Um, so yeah. Oh, they actually did update it. So before, this used to have 30 rounds. When they first released this season info. They have updated to 45, which I think is a very good change because 30 rounds in this tank would not be enough. The FP215B currently has 35 rounds, and everyone complains about how limited it is ammo wise, and especially with this thing having AP, heat, and HE. Yeah, definitely needed an ammo count buff, and seeing it at 45 is very good. 390 meters view range, decent, not bad, not great. We don't know what the camo's like on this tank, so we'll just have to wait and see tomorrow what it's like in game. Based on the armor profile they give us here, though, this thing looks tough from the front at least. Then again, we don't have exact armor values. That's the real kicker here. If you look in game at the armor inspector, which this is based off of, that's dark red plate at the front. That's entirely unknown, really. It could be anywhere from 231 millimeters or up. So, if it is only like 235, 240, I don't see this being a very difficult tank to pen, especially with premium rounds. But if it's something more like 300 to 350 range, I could see this being a bit more difficult. It is very flat. That is the one thing to keep into consideration. And the side armor it isn't great, so you can't really angle it as much as you'd really want to. It's kind of like the Minnow in that regard. So the Minnow's got very, very good frontal armor. But you can angle it a little bit, like just a wee bit, and then you get to this point, and people can start pinning your track. So you have to be very, very careful. And this is with 75 mils of side armor, and I suspect this thing will probably have something around that as well. But yeah, the roof of this tank is actually 20 millimeters or less based on the coloring as well. So pretty much any tank at tier 10 should be able to overmatch its roof and its engine deck. If it is side scraping a little bit, you can even hit this yellow part right here. That should be pinnable as well. The front plate and the whole of the below the turret should also be pinnable by certain caliber guns. I'm not really sure. That should be, I believe that's 50 millimeters or less of armor. So all 151 mil guns and above should overmatch. And depending on how it's angled, it should be pinnable even on flat ground by some tanks, maybe with heat or something. So yeah, that's just one thing to keep in mind. Again, we don't have exact armor values, so it's very hard to judge this tank. I think if it's got decent but not amazing frontal armor, I think this should be an okay tank, which I'm okay with. We already have an oversaturation of pretty broken TDs in the game already, and I think having one that's maybe even a bit on the weaker side isn't really a bad thing. I think it's got enough going for it that it'll be still a pretty decent tank to play, but probably not one that's too broken. But we'll have to just wait and see what the armor's like, really. Other than that, you get your 3D commander, your 2D commander, if you're into that sort of thing. And yeah, that's all for the season info. We'll go ahead and take a look over at the actual patch notes here and just go through some stuff. So if you didn't catch the dev stream, the returning map is Wide Park, and it's going to be available in World War II from battle tiers 3 to 8. It's the still same small size that it used to be, so you aren't getting an updated, changed map or anything. It is 600 by 600. So pretty much the same old Wide Park that you're used to. Nothing really changed too much. I will say I'm a little bit disappointed getting this map back. feel like there's still quite a few other good choices that they could bring over. Things like Sacred Valley, Windstorm, I think offered a lot more variety at higher tiers and stuff. And seeing another low tier map just coming off of Province, I'm not really a big fan. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. It does kind of look like they changed the hill that was in the bottom right corner of the map. It has a little castle on it now. I don't know how traversable this is going to be right here, but yeah, it's nice that they include like a little mini map as well. Um, but yeah, it should be interesting to see if you're actually able to get pretty high on the hill. I don't think you'd really get that much advantage because you'd probably be spotted sitting up there, but it could just be something fun to do in like custom games and stuff. So, next up, we got an update to the MVP screen. Um, not the biggest fan of it. I have already disliked having 3D commanders displayed here, and now having 2D commanders as well. I think it just takes attention away from the tank and the actual stats. That being said, they did update the stats, and I mean, okay, I guess. I'm just overall not a big fan of the MVP screen. I much prefer just the, post battle results screen. I can see everything, look at everything I want. This doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. If I was able to just disable this entirely, I probably would. But yeah. They did update their logo, so they have a new logo for World of Tanks Modern Armor. Not a huge change or anything, but everyone is going to get a new set of camouflage. So I think you only get one set of vouchers, so you get one for each season type in the game. So 4 total. And this is the new camouflage. Again, not a bad looking camo. I think they could have picked a different color than gray, but yeah. Kind of nice looking camo. We'll see what it looks like on other tanks. Kind of follows the old like nation specific ones that we got earlier this year, like the Swedish, the French, the American Patriot camos, kind of like that, but with their own logo. So pretty neat. Not not too bad. Let's see. They're changing the PEGI rating. I don't think. Yeah, they said minimal changes affecting new content and not existing pre-existing content. So whatever. I don't think we'll see much change based on that. Probably just something to do with like changing regulations, I'm assuming. UI changes, they're adding an MOE filter. So in the garage, you can filter by tanks that have at least one mark of excellence. I feel like this doesn't really help a lot of people. I mean, it might help some. So if you like want to filter, say you're wanting to like one mark every tank that you have, then you can exclude this, and then it'll only show tanks you don't have one marked. But people going for 2, 3, even 4 marks of excellence, this doesn't really affect at all. Unless you just wanted to show that you have one mark on a bunch of different tanks, which maybe you want to do that, I guess. Doesn't seem too useful in game though. So now when you're in the tech tree and you go to purchase a tank, you will now have the option to view details and preview the vehicle just by clicking either A or X, whatever console you're on. It will no longer just like bring you to the purchase screen. I think this is to kind of like make it easier, because right now these options are available from the tech tree, but you have to press like a different button on your controller, so they're just putting it in the same place. Again, not a bad change, not a great change either. Like I don't care. It doesn't really affect me. Maybe it's better for new player experience, and that's why they're doing it. I wouldn't really know, but that is a change that they're making. They're adding filters to the tank stats page, and I think this is amazing. Yeah, we've needed this for a while. They have their own like filters or like list filters currently in the game, but doesn't really do a whole lot. Now you'll be able to directly filter by what you want. I think this is a great change, one that's been needed for quite a while now. They added a premium AP icon. Okay. Although when you're actually hovering over any AP rounds in the premium slot, most of them just say APCR, so I wonder if they fixed that as well. Updated premium tank panels to split base XP and premium vehicle XP bonuses. Okay. All right, so just making that a bit clearer. For a lot of lower tier premiums have a lot like a high base XP or tank XP or bonuses. Like tier 5 to 6 usually have pretty big ones. Added some state flags that changed. Okay. Removing scrolling element from the following areas and replaced with paging for a cleaner look. Okay then. Had to see what that exactly looks like in game. HUD updates. Reticle lead marks. Horizontal lines left and right of the reticle have been added to the camera reticle. So they're adding leading marks to help players lead targets effectively. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this, to be honest. Hopefully we'll be able to disable this in some way, because I just don't like the cluttering of the reticle that has been taking place, over the past couple of years. Not a big fan of this change, so we plan to improve this further based on feedback to help assist players in leading moving targets more effectively. I feel like that's just like a skill in the game, though. Like you have to like learn, you know, lead based on your like ammo speed. I don't like why does this need to be part of the reticle? I don't know. They also updated alternate mode icons. So down at the bottom left next to your tank panel, you'll have the double barrel icon. I guess when you're in the double barrel mode, you have the turbo mode for things like the CS, siege mode, and drive mode for siege mode tanks like the STRV. Overall, good change, I think. Not the biggest of changes, but maybe it'll make it a bit more clear for new players and players that don't have the experience with those things. Auto Siege transition speed update. With the introduction of the Type 63, we made an adjustment to the auto siege speed activation to be 25 kilometers an hour instead of 15. This was widely received by you, the players, so we've decided to adjust all auto siege tanks to have the activation speed of 25. Okay. Just trying to think. So this, I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of this change either. We'll see. We'll see what it's like in game. I don't know. I've always wanted it to be lower. Because I feel like you only really use the siege mode when you're stationary, right? Like when you're peaking a hill, you're going very, very slow. It's not like you're going 20 kilometers an hour peaking like a hill or anything. Like I don't think this needs to be higher. I think it needs to be lower if anything. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Just see how it goes. I didn't buy the Type 63. I didn't even know it had siege mode. What even? This is, yeah. So this has siege mode. I didn't even know this had siege mode. Pretty sure this tank was just supposed to have the extra accuracy from PC, but whatever. Okay. Yeah. So we'll see how that works in the game. World War II tank balance update. Okay. They say final wave here, but on stream they said they weren't done. So, I don't know. I'm a little confused by that. So I definitely don't think they're done. They shouldn't be done. But anyway. Let's go ahead and just expand all. Why not? FV215B183, so the Death Star, is getting shot dispersion penalty during movement, so better dispersion during movement and rotation. Very slightly better. Probably won't really notice it too much, but not sure if it really needed the buff. Turret rotation going from 16 to 18. Sure, why not? The 183 mil gun. Reload time from 28 to 27.5 seconds, so half a second off. Not sure it really needed it. And dispersion penalty during rotation from 0.24 to 0.21. Okay. So that's turret rotation. During turret rotation. I'll be honest, I don't think 183s really need any buffs. I think they're in a good place where they were, and if anything, maybe even the 4005 needed a nerf. But hey, at least they didn't. I don't think this is overboard. You probably won't notice a difference playing with or against it in game. So whatever. Not gonna be too mad about it. The 215B, so the heavy tank version, dispersion during movement and rotation, 0.1 to 0.08. It already has really good dispersion at 0.1, so going to 0.08, again, you probably won't feel that. 120 millimeter gun, reload from 8.3 to a whopping 8.25. Wow, a 0.05 second reload buff. Okay. Accuracy going from 0.3 to 0.28 is actually huge. That's like same accuracy as a Leopard 1 now, I'm pretty sure. So, very accurate gun. Unfortunately, Wargaming seemed to miss the one thing that this tank needed, and that was more ammunition. As I said before, it only carries 35 rounds, and that's all this tank needed, honestly. Buff that up to 45, 50 rounds, and this tank would be pretty good. But right now, it's just very limited with 35 rounds. Manticore, okay. Terrain resistance is actually getting nerfed here, along with rotation speed. Okay. Shot dispersion during movement is getting worse, so worse dispersion as well. Worse turret rotation. Okay, so this is just a Manticore nerf. View range from 400 to 390. That's rough. Aim time from 1.9 to 2, accuracy 0.3 to 0.4. Okay. And also dispersion during rotation nerfed. I did not have the Manticore nerf in my bingo card, to be honest. Already a very, very situational light tank, and now they've made it just probably worse than, like, this is probably one of the worst light tanks now. Yeah, I don't know. You don't really think 10 meters is that big of a change, but it really is in the grand scheme of things, especially for light tanks. I suspect that'll be pretty rough. And it always had like a very reliable gun, and just nerfing it just makes no sense, especially considering its DPM is already atrocious, really, for light tanks. So yeah, not a fan of that one. The Sheridan, let's see, max HP to 1700, so they're doing the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen treatment to it. 0.3 off the reload as well, better accuracy, better aim time. Then 152 also getting some love as well, 0.7 off the reload, better accuracy, better aim time. Okay, I thought the Sheridan was already pretty decent as is, but you know, I don't think this buff will be too crazy, so we'll see. M48A5 Patton, max health, so 50 extra health. Slightly better reload, accuracy, aim time. Again, don't think this will move the needle too much, but we'll see. T57 Heavy. Better rotation, better ground resistances, 120 mil gun. So they're nerfing the reload from 25 to 26 seconds. So an extra second on the reload. The intraclip is also getting nerfed from 2 to 2.2. The accuracy, though, is getting buffed from 0.34 to 0.32. Aim time is getting buffed as well. And here's the kicker. Damage is getting the 420 alpha, like on the other 120s. So instead of having the 1600 clip potential, this thing is now going to have 1680 clip potential. But it's going to take longer to do so. Instead of clipping in 6 seconds, it'll be 6.6 seconds. Kind of an interesting thing. I'm glad they nerfed the intraclip for it. Otherwise, I think this tank would just be better than most of the other autoloading heavies, like the 50B and the Kron. We'll have to see. The T57 right now is already a monster, and I see this as a huge buff for it. So, you know, get your T57 heavies out. Should be pretty fun to use. E5. Please don't be a huge buff. Let's see. Uh, Huge hull rotation buff. 22 to 36 degrees a set. Like, that's a huge buff, actually. Okay. Yeah, the E5, turning wasn't always the best thing. 36 degrees a sec. That's a huge buff. Okay. Better dispersion, slightly better terrain resistances. Max health is going to 2400. Holy. Okay. 120 mil gun, 8.4 to 8.6. So reload nerf, but an accuracy buff and a damage buff. Okay. Wow. All right. Break out your E5s, because this is another huge buff to the tank. Very accurate gun, a lot of HP, better mobility, higher alpha. This is going to be an insane tank. I'm really sad about this because I think the E5 in its current state is already fantastic. It's a joy to play, and I feel like this just pushes it too far to where I just feel bad playing it and feel like I'm playing just a super meta tank. So, yeah, we'll see. The M48A2, so this is the 120 mil pattern. Better hull rotation, an extra 100 hit points. Okay, so that's closing in T95E6 territory. 120 mil gun is getting a reload nerf, but it is getting the 420 alpha. Okay, and it's getting more ammunition. Okay, and it's getting more turret armor. All right, so not a big fan of this change either. Don't feel like it was too necessary. The ammo's great. I love the ammo count buff, but everything else, I think the M48 120 is already one of the best damage farmers for pubs in the game, and I feel like this is just going to push it even further. So, break out your M48 120s, I guess. This might even overtake the E6, honestly, with the 420 alpha and having close to the same HP. It's getting close to the E6 territory. T58 heavy is getting some mobility buffs and aim time buffs, so nothing too crazy on that. T58 definitely doesn't need buffs. It's very strong as is. MBTB is getting a damage buff. Interestingly, it's going from 420 to 430. And it's also getting a full second better reload. Sorry. Wow. Okay. Big buff for the MBDB. I think probably deserved. I don't think the MBDB was very good. It was okay. Don't get me wrong. Like, if this tank came out in like 2019, 2020 era in World of Tanks, it would have been probably a pretty decent tank. But coming out in 2024, just not it. Too many better options, and view range actually going to 420, so it's going to have joint highest view range in the game. All right, interesting, pretty good. Yeah. Object 277 is getting an extra 100 hit points and better terrain resistances. Would have liked to see some engine power here, because as it stands, the IS-7 just has a higher top speed and higher engine power and better armor. There's not a whole lot of reason to use the 277 other than its gun having 340 heat. But we'll see. Okay. K91, better ground resistances, rotation speed, accuracy, and dispersion. Okay, some small buffs. Probably won't be too noticeable. I was hoping for a fully rotatable turret, like the PC version got. Maybe even a reload buff, but that was not to be. ST2 is getting the same treatment as the tier 9. Yeah, so just worse reload, and longer cooldowns. Okay, so double barrel nerfs coming in. Interesting. Not sure if the ST2 really needed it. Maybe a small nerf to like the auto advance mode would make sense. Like, yeah. I don't think it needed all this other stuff though, to be honest. So tier 9 totally justified. This was not as strong as the tier 9 tier for tier though. And the 780 is getting better dispersion during movement, very slightly. Won't notice that change. Max health 2200 to 2300, pretty significant. 100 HP and better reload. Okay. Second off the reload. Wow. I feel like the 780 was in a good spot. as it was. So, not really sure why it's getting buffed as well, but there we go.
So as far as my closing thoughts on the whole balance patch, I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be honest. I think Wargaming missed a huge opportunity. Uh, you know, Under the American, the British, and the Soviet tech trees falls most of the problem tanks in the game right now, especially at tier 10. You have tanks like the T110E4, the AVRE, the Chieftain even, although, there are different levels of, uh, you know, OPness, brokenness. And the Chieftain, while not like as big of a problem as the other tanks, I do think it outshines many of its opponents, like the E5, um, and even Valors and just other heavies and stuff in what it can do. Same with IS-7. Like these two tanks, I don't think they're too crazy at the moment, but I do think they should be brought down a little bit and give some breathing room for other tanks to have unique qualities. Like the IS-7 right now, kind of just outshines the 277 and many of the other Soviet and Chinese heavy tanks. It has better armor, it has better mobility. The gun, while not as good, um, it's not bad either. So it's kind of it just kind of pushes the boundaries, I guess, is what I'm trying to say of what tanks can do, and you know, just holds back other tanks from really shining in their own way. Um, and then getting back to like more broken tanks, you have the 268 and the Tehran, obviously. Yeah, I think these tanks definitely need to be touched, particularly the Tehran, the 268, the E4, and the AVRE. I think those are probably four of the biggest defenders at tier 10, and the fact that none of those are getting any changes whatsoever is really disappointing, in my opinion. Then, on the opposite end, you have tanks that probably should have been buffed in some way that really just weren't, or they didn't get what they really needed. You have tanks like the 4202 and Action X. While not necessarily bad tanks, they definitely fall behind some of the other mediums, particularly the American ones, especially with the buffs to the M48 120 and the M48 Patton. I think these two tanks just really can't hold up to those kind of standards anymore. And tanks like the E6, Leopard, those are already far way and above. Even the nerfed CS is still better than these tanks in so many ways. Um, 215B, while it is getting a buff, and I think the accuracy buff is kind of niche on the tank, getting back up to the Leopard standards. The ammo count, man, 35 rounds just isn't enough. I would love to be able to use some HE. It's got 120 mils of HE pen, but um, you just can't really afford to carry any because you need those 35 rounds in case you have to, have a big carry in a tier 10 game with a lot of HP. So yeah, just an ammo count buff. Get it up to 45, maybe even 50, maybe even more. Like, I don't think ammo count should be a balancing factor for any tanks. Um, you know, the Russian mediums, you have tanks like the Object 140, the 430 with the small gun, the 907, K91, T22 medium, T62A. All of these guns with 320 alpha just feel so irrelevant and useless in the game right now. Sure, they have great reloads on some of them. Some not so much. Tanks like the T22 or the 907 really struggle in that regard. But in general, I think they have pretty decent reload times. But when you're just trading 320 alpha for, some of these TDs are hitting for 850, 950, 1,000 plus. Um, and then you have even heavies like the E5, the Chieftain, that have close to the same reload time as these tanks, but still do more damage. Um, I think it's time these tanks get a buff. I think going from 320 alpha to 360 would be a huge change for these tanks, and then kind of grouping their reloads around the same would be huge as well. Because like I said, tanks like the 907 and the T22 medium, their reloads are still quite long for what they are. Um, I think they definitely need more help than anything. And yeah, just the general 320 to 360 alpha change would be huge for these tanks as well. The 430U, it's just fallen behind so much. 1900 hit points on a tank that's supposed to be like more of a brawling medium. You know, it's falling even behind. You know, it's so far behind the American mediums at this point. The M48 Patton will have 2050 now. The M48 120 will have 2100. The E6 already has 2160. I mean, that's a huge margin for this tank to be below. And on top of that, the gun handling, the accuracy, the DPM, all just struggle. And to be honest, I'd rather just play a 1-2-1. I think the 1-2-1 outclasses the 430U in every way now. And yeah. K91 would have loved to get the fully traversable turret that PC has recently got. I think that would make this tank quite enjoyable to play as well. And lastly, I have the 268 version 4, which, man, in case you haven't already, you couldn't already tell, I think tank destroyers are way too powerful in this game. This is the only exception to that, and that exception being this tank needs much more mobility. 40 kilometer an hour top speed, it isn't the slowest, but when you take a look at things like the power to weight being at 11.33, this tank is going nowhere quickly. I think giving this thing something closer to this 263 mobility would be huge. You know, get that power to weight up to a respectable like 17 to 18, top speed up to like 50, 55, and I would even go as far to nerf the cupola armor. You know, right now it's about 230. Put it down to, 180 across the board, or even like 160. Make that cupola weak spot, but give it the mobility to be able to get around and be the brawling TD that it really wants to be. I think that would make this tank really fun to play. And it still has the really bad gun. It's not going to be too broken. I think that would be a great change for the game. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the balance changes. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't the greatest either. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.